Hey guys, remember when Trump said
But
this?
we had no wars. They said, he will start a war. I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars.
Now, technically, he hasn't officially started a war, as he can't. Only Congress has the authority uh, to enact war. But he has authorized several special military operations in numerous sovereign countries in just his first year back in office. Today's chapter in U.S. imperialism is actually a rerun, as back in the early 2000s, then Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez was temporarily ousted in a coup that was orchestrated by American forces, and he was replaced by Pedro Carmona, who then dissolved the National Assembly and attempted to undo many of Chavez's reforms. Carmona and the United States would not stay in power for long, however, as mass mobilization of Venezuelans to the capital forced Chavez back into power. In this current version, the United States, by way of the Trump administration, put out the seeds of propaganda when they were supposedly concerned about Tren de Aragua taking over apartment complexes in the country.
Maduro sent savage and murderous gangs, including the bloodthirsty prison gang, Tren de Aragua, to terrorize American communities nationwide. And he did indeed. They were in Colorado. They took over apartment complexes. They cut the fingers off people if they call police.
Now, these allegations were false, but as is typical with the mainstream news cycle, the truth is rarely broadcasted to the masses. Following that story was the constant reinforcement by Trump officials that Nicolas Maduro was also in charge of a different cartel, and that they were flooding the US with illicit drugs. This was the justification the Trump administration gave in order to justify to the American people, who really is diehard supporters, that the United States needs to drop bombs on random boats in the Caribbean, also with zero evidence that these boats are in any way, shape, or form transporting drugs or criminals to the shores of the United States. Now, before we get into what happened this past week, let's remember, according to Trump and his cabinet, Venezuela was being run by a rogue dictator, and the United States was there to not only protect its borders, but release the people of Venezuela from evil and establish democracy. So can someone tell me where all this talk of oil came from?
To have our very large United States oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure, and start making money for the country. And we are.
Forget about Saudi Arabia. Forget about the Saudis. I mean, we have more oil. I mean, infinite potential. And we're going to open markets. We're going to kick off the government from the oil sector. We are going to privatize all our industry. Venezuela has huge resources: oil, gas, minerals, land, technology. And as you said before, we have a strategic location, hours from the United States. So we're going to do this right. We know what we have to do. And American companies are in, super strategic position to invest. This country, Venezuela, is going to be the brightest opportunity for investment of American companies, of good people that are going to make a lot of money.
In a previous video I made, I talked about the resources Venezuela has and the actual reasons why the United States is interested in the country. Straight out of the CIA playbook. So seeds of dissent in a country with resources like oil, precious metals, really anything that will keep the war machine going or capitalize on any existing dissent. In this case, Maduro was a dictator who canceled elections in Venezuela. The dissent was already established. Next, under the guise of spreading democracy or neutralizing a threat, the US will either authorize a covert takeover, like they just did in Venezuela, or a full-scale invasion like the war in Iraq. The third step is for the United States to choose which leader will be most beneficial to US business interests, in particular, businesses that profit off the war machine like big oil and military contractors. In this case, it was believed that the puppet for Venezuela would be Maria Corina Machado, who was the past winner of the Nobel Peace Prize. We have already heard her say how much she would love to open up the oil business in Venezuela to foreign businesses, which sounds good. But if we look back on our CIA playbook, typically the countries that the US gets involved in do not prosper in the ways in which they were told. Just take a look at how well Afghanistan is running after 20 years of American occupation there. She was positioning herself to be installed as a puppet leader until the Trump administration dropped the mask fully and declared this.
Mr. President,
you said that the U.S. is going to run Venezuela. So who's in power right now?
Well, we're going to be running it with a group, and we're going to make sure it's run properly. We're going to rebuild the oil infrastructure, which will cost billions of dollars. It'll be
So not only will the United States be running Gaza, if you remember, but now Venezuela too. I think we should take a moment here and reflect. For those who buy into the propaganda that whenever America enters a country, it is there to release democracy like a foul plague. At any point in that process, was any of it democratic? Can you make the argument that Iraq and Afghanistan were democratic? Is it democratic for the Venezuelans to be under U.S. rule until the United States picks a leader that is beneficial to the interests of the United States? Is it democracy for Congress to not have a final say on any foreign military intervention? As a matter of fact, let's ask the Venezuelans in the country how they feel about this newfound democracy that was just blessed upon them.
Queremos vivir en nuestra patria con nuestro presidente, con los hombres y las mujeres que amamos este país. Déjanos en paz. Queremos paz. Tú nos quieres llevar a la guerra, nosotros queremos paz. Pero ya estamos en la calle, dispuestos a dar nuestra vida si es necesario para defender a la patria a nuestro presidente Nicolás Maduro. ¡Que viva Maduro! ¡Que viva!
Is it even beneficial to you, the average American with car debt, medical debt, mortgage debt, God knows what else, for your government to spend millions, billions, and trillions on another foreign conquest? How many of you have stock in Chevron, ExxonMobil, Citgo? I don't. How many of you are old enough to remember when the United States first invaded Iraq 20 years ago? Does any of this sound familiar to you? Were you even paying attention then? And do you care now? How can this special military operation be about decreasing crime and drugs in the United States when Trump himself pardoned a former Venezuelan drug lord / president? How can the U.S. justify being the world's top cop when Benjamin Netanyahu was just at Mar-a-Lago a few weeks ago? Same Benjamin Netanyahu that has an international arrest warrant for the genocide he's been conducting. The media headlines in America this past week were dominated by alleged Somali fraud in Minnesota. But there are crickets from the same mainstream media machine when the American public is going to be defrauded into another decades-long occupation. So what is next? If you ask Marco Rubio and Donald Trump, the United States will indirectly govern Venezuela. By that I mean the U.S., and this is straight from the horse's mouth, will control Venezuela via sanctions and cripple the country and its people unless the current government cooperates to the benefit of America. Not only that, the president has already made mention of numerous other neighboring countries that are about to receive the same treatment, starting with Colombia and looking at even across the world as far as Greenland. Fire Nation is back, baby.